Thank you. What if every moment was a miracle? Was that the line? What if every moment was a miracle? What if every moment was a miracle? Wow. Is a miracle something that seems so far-fetched, that seems sort of magical, that seems kind of like only for some people, or only if you work really hard or pray hard you'll get a miracle? Who feels that way? Who has ever felt that way? Some people. And yet miracles are just that which we've sometimes never seen before, right? It's just something that is appearing to be real, that has always been, and that brings that's such a beautiful concept. And it really speaks to this theme that we have this month. We are being pulled by vision. And what does that mean, being pulled by vision? We began this month with July 4th, which was an experience of opening back up fully with our youth and our music, and we got to speak these words of truth, that which is self-evident, that all people are created equal, and we went through this Declaration of Independence, which is such a vigorous and strong statement of rebellion, right, to that which oppresses us. And that's kind of what we're all about here too, right? Only normally it's our own minds that are oppressing us. And so what I would like to share this morning is what we're calling stayed. And I want to say stayed with conviction and with a vigor that is strong and sturdy. Because when we wake up in the morning with our minds stayed on spirit, and we walk and talk with our minds stayed on spirit, that can be really friggin' hard. Is it hard for anybody else? Yeah. Does anybody forget? Okay, me too. I'm just saying. And then I'm reminded of the unique and individual light that is within each of us when I see things like Janie. I don't know if you guys know Janie. She's sitting back there with all of these beautiful paintings that she created and that her sister created. And in her own way, this is her and her sister's heart stayed on spirit, right? And then when Andrea creates this beautiful, poetic, lyrical truth, her mind is stayed on spirit. And when you are with your instrument, Billy, and I can feel that you are stayed on spirit. And what does that even mean, to be stayed on spirit? What does that mean? Anybody know what that means? It seems a little ambiguous, a little gray. Focused, yeah. And so there's this story, because yes, focused on that place that stayed on spirit, that spirit that's within us. But here's the deal. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Upanishads. They are an ancient Hindu scripture, and there's the fable in it where it talks about this idea that, and when I read this, I was like, oh, so maybe you'll get an O, or maybe it'll be. So anyway, the story begins that all humans were gods and goddesses. But we didn't really tend to our goddessness, our godness, correctly. We took advantage of it. We did things that maybe we shouldn't have been doing. We overextended ourselves. And so the great god, the Brahman, he said, he collected a council of other gods, and he said, listen, we've got to take humanity's divinity and we got to put it somewhere else, because it's just not working with it being all available to them. They're taking it to an extreme that is not appropriate and healthy. And so they decide, where do we put humanity's divinity? And so one of the gods said, well, maybe we can put it at the really high, tallest mountain. And the Brahmin said, no, at some point humans are going to learn to climb that mountain. And so somebody else said, well, why don't we put it at the depths of the ocean, like really, really far down? And he said, no, I have a feeling they're going to get smart enough to learn how to look there too. And so he thought about it for a while, and he thought about it, and he thought about it. And he said, you know what? I know the one place they're not going to look. Let's put it inside themselves. Let's put it inside themselves. And so, although it might be a contradiction because we are affirming that the divine, that the Spirit is within us, right? I am. You get to decide for yourself. Let me just state that. How long and how hard and how much pressure have we put on ourselves to look to others, to take, no offense, workshops, which are wonderful, but to read tons of books and follow gurus and go to these extreme lengths to try and find that indwelling presence that we didn't really realize was indwelling this whole time, right? We were like the fish in the bowl looking for the water. It's in us. It's through us. It is us. And so to keep our minds stayed on this, to keep our hearts stayed in a place of wanting, of desiring, and it can start with a want. People say that you shouldn't want something because it's going to create more wanting. But you got to start somewhere. So maybe want it. And maybe that makes you come here more often or take a class or talk to somebody and they'll remind you. And wanting turns into believing, and believing turns into knowing, and knowing turns into a conviction and a solid, firm affirmation that I am waking up this morning with my mind stayed on Spirit, and that means that when I go out into the world, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say, oh my God, it's so beautiful to see you. And oh my God, it's so beautiful to be you. I think one of the aspects of this that can be a little bit intimidating is something that Ralph Waldo Emerson, who's the grandfather of the New Thought movement, which is the umbrella denomination that our Centers for Spiritual Living falls under, if any of that makes any sense. And he writes this essay called Heroism. And he says that the hero can never and will never make sense to the common person. And the common person will never make sense to the hero. And I believe that we are all heroes. Because if you walked into this place, you may have probably already looked us up online. Or you might have seen an ad in the newspaper that said it's kind of different here. Or you might have just been called, right? And so what this means is that heroic or that heroism, it is intrinsic within us, within many of us. And it says that I am going to stand firm in my conviction no matter what you say. That you can gossip about me, you can say what you'd like, you can call me names, and I am going to use that inner conviction of knowing that I live with an indwelling Spirit and I live with an indwelling knowing of my own truth, enough so that I can praise myself instead of having you praise me, right? And knowing that this is a courageous path to take, the path of the hero, because many of the heroes have been persecuted. They've been, well, and not that any of us have been there, but look at what happened to Jesus. Look at what happened to Martin Luther King, right? Look at how but did they care? Do you really think that they cared in that moment when they passed, that they passed? I don't think so. I think that they were so invigorated by their truth and by the message that they were bringing that they knew that no matter what, they were living from that place. They were living from that place of that knowing that what they were doing was right for them, and it made a difference. And so when we can speak our words of truth, our own words of truth, not mine. You don't have to reiterate what I say. You guys are probably much more wise than I am. When you can reiterate what that spirit within you calls you to say, that divinity within you, out into the world and speak it with conviction and vigor, and be hopefully only symbolically spit on or sacrificed, that is the true hero. That is the true spiritual path. It's not one of ease and grace all the time, I'm sorry. But it is one of deep and powerful love. There is a truth that abides, and it brings us comfort and confidence. There is a calm confidence and a quiet expectancy. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our philosophy, he says that there's a calm confidence and a quiet expectancy of good when we live our lives in such a way that is expressing good to others. And sometimes that's really hard. I remember when I first came back to the centers, I was 26 or so, and I had a lot of self-loathing, and it was bad. It was icky. Really, really icky. And I decided, I made a declaration that a living amends would be to be an example for my children. And they were young enough that I could do that. And so I decided that I was going to start by waking up every morning and keeping my mind solely focused on the good, on finding good in all people. And maybe that meant that I had to be a super introvert and stay at home a lot. And that's okay. Or maybe it meant I have to tattoo reminders on my arms, and that's okay. Whatever it takes, because there are things that are self-evident. It is self-evident that we are living in a mind, a divine intelligence, and it's self-evident because we have life. And this, if you've ever taken a biology class, you know how incredibly ridiculous it is that we have life. It is self-evident that there is a nature of good within each of us. And it's self-evident because no matter how many times we go through hardships, there's a saying that says that a star only shines so bright because of all of the blankety darkness around it, right? It's a whole blank pile of darkness that makes this star shine so bright. And so I don't know what's going on in your life, but I'm sure that over the past couple years, you've had your highs and lows. You've had your good times and your bad, and Lord knows I have. And I want to invite Travis up here to remind us in his own way, because he is the divine incarnate, as are all of you, to remind us that we can live a life from youth, well, not that youthful, 37, I don't know, to whatever age Travis is, and all in between, and come from where we are and share that one truth. So Travis, come on up here, buddy. You can strut. Go ahead, strut your stuff. There you go.
My pleasure. All right. Thank you, Reverend Nicole.
You're welcome.
And you have made already 4 or 5 of my points, but I'm going to proceed trusting that those are points that bear repeating. So, and we're going to pick it up again with things self-evident. As we take classes in this philosophy with Ernest Holmes, a lot of us have been sometimes amused by Ernest Holmes' variety of statements he makes, his bold proclamations, starting with, "It is self-evident." And sometimes these statements are ones that you think, wait a minute, it's sure not self-evident to me, I have to think about this, and one of those statements, it wasn't really a self-evident statement from Ernest Holmes, but one that sticks out in my mind was when he said, it is the nature of infinity to be fully present at every point in the universe. To which I said, huh? Really? Is that true of infinity? I'm going to have to think about that. Well, as time went by, as I took classes, that point came to be very important, and I understood it, and the day came when it was self-evident to me as well. At the other end of the spectrum, if you read in Living the Science of Mind, there's a little chapter called God, the Self-Evident Truth Within You. And the first line is, similar to something Reverend Nicole said, it is self-evident that we live. Well, okay, yeah, I can grasp that. That's pretty easy. So there's a wide range of ideas that are presented here as things that are said from this platform, things that are read in our literature, and many of them are beyond the grasp of, we all find something that's beyond our grasp, and it's particularly true for people that are new to our spiritual community, and so that it's a new philosophy. And I can understand that. I've experienced, well, let me say, at the age of 19, I had been in the Baptist church my whole life, and I discovered at that age that I was not able to say with sincerity, God is. And that provided me with the main reason that I decided to leave that church. That didn't make sense to me. After all these years, I can't say for certainly that God exists. I mean, that's pretty basic, isn't it? What it amounted to me was some kind of gross failure. And what that was about, I discovered later, was that the kinds of truths and the level to which I knew them came from listening to people who were like authority figures, Sunday school teachers and pastors, who would tell us what truth was, and we were expected just to accept it because they said. And so that really amounts to having a body of knowledge that is rather superficial. So in 1986, I was invited to the first church the first Church of Religious Science in Durango, and you may not know, the Church of Religious Science became Centers for Spiritual Living. And it was not long after I attended that church that I took my first class. And very soon I came to see what a dramatic different approach they had in the Church of Religious Science for teaching. They not only presented students with ideas that were potentially healing, nurturing, empowering, but beyond that, they gave us recommendations. They taught us to use tools, which we call spiritual practices, so that we would be able to accept the invitation that they extended to us. You know, the difference is here, in the spirit of sharing, in the spirit of saying, this works for me. It's more of a feminine principle. You know, this is what nurtures me. This is what heals me. This is how unconditional love works for me. I share it with you and invite you to take it for these ideas for a road test and see how far you can go with it. And that happens because we are given spiritual practices to use, and it provides the means by which we have a personal experience of these ideas in such a way that we can move to a deeper level and say, boy, I truly know these things in a way that supports me, that is of value, not just superficial knowledge, but I'm able to stand here and say that I hold these truths to be self-evident. So the spiritual path then, which Ram Dass referred to as Journey of Awakening, I like that, that's one of his books. that's a forever path. And there was a point on that path where I was when I was 19, and I have come here, and among you out there here in the sanctuary or online, there may be even a broader range than that of people. And, that presents to us a really interesting task, because what we're wanting to do is meet everybody where they are. And people are all over the map. So it is incumbent upon us to endeavor to speak to everyone in some way to help them move forward, because that's what our intention is, for everybody to be able to step forward and move along that spiritual path. If someone had said to me when I was 19 years old, when you wake up in the morning, have your mind stayed on spirit, I would have said, huh? What are you talking about? How do I do that? That would have been beyond my grasp to even imagine what that meant. And even right now, that may be the case for some people. And one thing we need to do is define our terms. And probably the term we need to look at is spirit. First, I can't really have my mind stayed on spirit if I don't know what it is. So we can turn to the glossary in Ernest Holmes' textbook, and he says that the spirit in people is that part which enables one to know himself or herself, what he or she really is. It is the God in you. That is spirit. So that provides a clue as to maybe the direction to go, to have your mind stayed on spirit. And I can say that doing that has a lot to do with this center that we have within. I'll turn to Ernest Holmes because, once again, from a quote he has, that there is a center in you that already knows. The rest of the quote is, develop the consciousness that flows from this center, for it is the secret place of the Most High within you. And that is another thing that I heard clear back in the Baptist church. The secret place of the Most High. That God is closer than hands and feet. That in Him I move and live and have my being. But in those days, I was familiar with these passages. I'd heard them, but they held no value to me. I could not use them because they were on the level of multiplication tables. There was there was nothing of practical value for me in that knowledge. It was not until I took classes in this philosophy that I was moved to know these things at a deep level where I could say I hold these truths to be self-evident. But the key thing is there is a center in you that already knows. And that is an integral part of spirit, because remember the definition of spirit, that place in you that knows who you are. There's a center in you that already knows. Let's talk about that center. It accounts for the reason why a lot of people will come here one time and they'll hear a number of things said up here, and they find that it resonates with them, that it sounds right, enough so that it's warranted to come again, maybe come back for further inquiry or exploration of these ideas. And that's one of the things that center within that knows does for us. Because that's an example of the guidance it provides. It gives us a little nudge, gives us a hunch that I'm onto something here. And so let's pretend for a moment that you believe in this center, and that it is active and ready to guide you, and listen. And it may serve you to close your eyes and breathe in a deep, relaxed manner and listen. I am walking a path to my own greater yet to be. Spirit is closer than hands and feet because it is me. To this child of the Most High, all things are possible. I've been living out a life built on limited beliefs, but a new freedom is putting all that behind me. By leaps and bounds, the best is yet ahead. There is a center in me which is responding to these words in a way that confirms the value of them. Okay, so open your eyes, and maybe I have been of assistance in bringing that center more evident to each person. Now, this is one of many centers which provides opportunities for everyone to take the steps from superficial, shallow knowledge, to take the steps to move into using spiritual practices, to take these ideas that sound so great at a surface level and make them deeper so that each one of us can say, I know this is true, and this is of value to me because, unlike before, I can live from these ideas, live from this consciousness. I'd like to ask if you have taken a class at this center or another center, would you stand up, please? And if you have been part of a book study, stand up. Now, raise your hand if you would say that you derive great benefits from those programs. And now turn around and wave to the people sitting down. And these are the people you can talk to if you want to chat with them and find out how this has changed their lives. So what I want to do is I want to just tell you one more thing before I close, and that is that just about 3 or 4 mornings ago, I woke up and guess what? Come on. My mind was stayed on spirit, and part of your mind being stayed on spirit is that makes genius available to you. And I had this great idea that while I'm up here, I would lead the game of Mother May I and say to each person, take a giant step forward. And now don't ask Mother May I, because Mother God and her husband long, long ago, before time even began, said, yes, you may, you can, you already are. And so it is. And for this prayer, I invite you again, just breathe a deep and relaxed breath and know that there is a presence here, and it is a divine presence. And I am just knowing right now that more and more people are awakening to the truth that within this divine presence there is a treasure chest of divine attributes. And that as I become one with that divine presence, that all of the love, all of the joy, all of those things, that's the infinite, fully available at this point in the universe where I am. That's the value, that I may derive full benefit of being a child of the Most High when I unite, commune with the divine presence, and know that it is who and what I am, and that its one will, as I look at all the life in the world, it is clear it wishes to be fully expressed through me as me. I get my old self out of the way. The old beliefs, the old thought patterns, the limited ideas that I picked up along the way in my upbringing, that I put behind me. Now is a new day. As Maya Angelou said, the horizon leads forward, offering me space to place new steps of change. And with my mind stayed on spirit, I am prepared to take those steps. And so shall it ever be. and so it is.